Alright guys, so next in Bible, we're going to be doing a unit called Unit 3, It's God Prepares a Leader. The very first story that we are reading about is about Joseph. Now Joseph was an Israelite, and Joseph eventually became a slave. And he became a slave because of something terrible that his brothers did. But we are going to learn how God took something that was completely awful to him and how he made it into something good. Now, Joseph had a father named Jacob. Alright, and Jacob had 12 sons. And Joseph was the next to the youngest, so he had a lot of older brothers. But he was the favorite of Jacob. And so because he was the favorite, one day he made him a very, very beautiful robe. We know it as the coat of many colors. His brothers were very, very jealous. They wanted him to, share the robe. They wanted their dad to make a robe like that for them. They basically wanted their father to show them that he loved them like he loved Joseph. One night, when Joseph went to sleep, he had a dream. And in this dream, he decided, when he woke up, that he was going to share them because it was very bizarre. And as you can see, you've got the haystacks right here, and it looks like they're bowing to the other haystack. When he woke up, he told his brothers that he had dreamed that their bundles of grain had bowed down to his bundle of grain. So he said, guess what, brothers? I had a dream that your bundles of grain bowed down to my bundles of grain. Now, most of y'all have brothers or sisters. Some have older, some have younger, some have both. But how would you feel if your brother or sister came to you and told you that? Do you think you would take it very well because his brothers didn't? Joseph had another dream, and he told his family about the dream, that the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars all bowed down to him. Jacob thought that it meant that one day the entire family would bow down to Joseph. Now, his brothers were already jealous because of the way their father loved him more than they were loved. And so this made them very, very angry. His brothers became angrier and angrier, and eventually they carried him down and threw him into a dry well. And if you can see that, look how deep that well is, guys. That is really, really deep. It looks like it's probably about 3 times how tall he was. So that's a pretty, pretty deep well. He is not getting out of there anytime soon. One day, there were some traders that came along. Joseph's brothers decided this would be the perfect opportunity to get rid of him. And they were so angry that they decided to sell him to the traders. However, they knew, because what they did was so awful, that they could not tell their father what they had done. So the brothers lied to the father, and they told him that Joseph had been killed by a wild animal. And as you can see, Jacob is just completely devastated. Now, the traders took Joseph to Egypt. And in Egypt, the Israelites were made to be prisoners. So he was thrown in prison. Joseph knew that he had done nothing wrong, so he believed that God would help him and that God would look after him. I don't know how you feel, but that would be very, very hard to be put in jail knowing you hadn't done anything wrong and you're in a strange country. And it would be really easy to feel like maybe God had even forgotten about you. But Joseph didn't forget to thank God because he knew that God would look after him and take care of him. And he never forgot God during this whole time that he was going through this. Joseph ended up making a friend The friend that he made was the Pharaoh's wine taster. Now, a Pharaoh was an Egyptian king, and because the king was so powerful, this is something we learn about in history. It didn't really matter what country. Even in Britain or England, where the Queen Elizabeth has just died, she would have even had a taster. Somebody who would drink her drinks, eat her food, to make sure that there was no poison. Because she was so powerful, people would have wanted to get rid of her. And it was the same thing with the Pharaoh. So this man that he became friends with, that was what he did for the Pharaoh. He tasted his drinks, and he tasted his food for him to make sure that there was no poison. And of course, if there was poison, unfortunately, whoever the taster was, they would die, but the king would remain safe. The man told Joseph one day about a dream that he had, and he said, "I dreamt I was picking grapes and squeezing them into the Pharaoh's cup. Then I put the cup in his hand." What does that mean? So Joseph told him that it meant that he would soon be free, and he would be released from jail, and once again he would be the wine taster for Pharaoh. A few days later, Joseph found out that what he told his friend had actually come true. So the wine taster was released from jail, and he went back to being the person that tasted the wine for the Pharaoh. Now, not long after this, the Pharaoh started to have some strange dreams. And we can see right here that it looks like in his dreams, he's got a regular looking cow and a super, super unhealthy looking skinny cow. And it says that the Pharaoh saw 7 skinny cows and 7 heavy cows. And the skinny cows ate up all of the heavy cows. So the skinny cows ate the heavy cows. That's a little unusual to begin with. But that's what happened. Now, in another dream, the Pharaoh saw where he had 7 healthy plants. The healthy plants are the corn that's on the right-hand side, right here. And then he had 7 dried up plants. And that's right here. Looks like maybe they weren't getting something that we have learned about in science class that they would need. Maybe some water, some nutrients, some sun, some air, some space. We don't know. But the dried up plants, that's those right here, ended up eating the healthy plants. Now this left the Pharaoh very confused. I don't know about you, but that kind of confuses me. I wouldn't know what that dream meant if I had it. The wine taster heard the Pharaoh and his wise men talking one day about the dreams. And he told the Pharaoh, he said, "Look, I've got a friend named Joseph, and he can tell you what your dream means." So the Pharaoh asked for Joseph to be brought from the jail to him so he could tell him about the meaning of his dream. Now Joseph knew what the dreams meant, and he told the Pharaoh, "For 7 years, plenty of food will grow. For the 7 years after that, however, you will not have enough food as there will be no rain." So see, now we know why we had those dried up looking plants. It's because there wasn't enough rain, which we know that water and rain, that's very, very important for the plants, as we learned about in science class. The Pharaoh was very impressed, and so he gave Joseph a very important job. Alright, so then we move on to the next part of the story, guys. Joseph saves his family. So already a lot has happened. We had Joseph, who was the favorite of his father Jacob. He got a coat of many colors, and his brothers felt like he was getting special treatment. So because of this, they decided to do something really mean and really horrible, and they sold him to these traders, who then brought him to Egypt and put him in jail. And now he has got a very important job from the Pharaoh. So things are looking better for Joseph. So I bet Joseph was thinking, God is finally coming through for me. For 7 years, Joseph was in charge of gathering the crops in Egypt. He made sure that there was extra food stored away for the 7 years when the crops would not grow. So during this time, his very important job was to make sure that he put extra food aside so that when there was no food going to grow during that 7-year period, they would still have something to eat on. And that was his important job. When the 7 years began that were the poor years, there were so many people that didn't have food. I mean, even people in other countries. This would be like in America. Let's say something happened and we didn't have any food in America. And then let's say there's other countries like Mexico that also don't have food. That's kind of what was going on here. Egypt didn't have food. And then you had other countries as well. Joseph's family was some of those people that did not have enough food to eat. So his father Jacob sent Joseph's brothers to Egypt and asked them to buy some food so that they would have something to eat. Now, when the brothers got to Egypt, they went to Joseph and they bowed down before him. Do y'all see that? Does that remind you of something? Does it remind you of maybe the dried up, the grain that was bowing down to his grain, the very first dream that he had? Does that remind you of that? Now, keep in mind, guys, they didn't know that this was their brother. They had no idea. And Joseph knew, but he didn't say anything. Instead, he sold them food and they traveled back home. Now, when his brothers returned for even more food, they bowed down to him again, just as he had dreamed. And at this point, Joseph was like, let me tell you guys who I am. And his brothers seemed to be very afraid. Why do you think they were afraid? You think it's because they realized what they had done to him? And they were afraid that maybe he was going to pay them back for all the terrible things that they had done to him? Could be. Joseph told them, though, he said, don't be afraid. He said, let us celebrate. So he wanted to celebrate because the family was finally joined together again. Joseph's brothers rushed home. They told their dad, Jacob. They said, hey, look, here's what happened. We're sorry, but the good news is he's still alive. And Jacob, of course, was thrilled. And so the whole family then moved to Egypt because they wanted to be close to Joseph. All right, guys, so that's a very interesting story that we need to think of sometimes when we're going through really hard things. God always comes through. He always keeps his promises. There are some things that we will continue going over next week and during our live lesson that kind of builds upon this. But I hope you guys enjoyed the story. I hope y'all are having fun doing different things while still connecting with the classroom. I look forward to seeing y'all on Friday, and I hope y'all just enjoy your time away and y'all get rest and lots of fun and just come back ready to learn on Friday. Alright, guys, well, y'all take care. I will see all of you on Friday morning. Love you guys. I will see y'all at 8 a.m.